Welcome to another midweek devotion from the United Methodist Church in Littleton, Illinois. Every Wednesday, I try to post some sort of inspiring video clip, usually of nature, and give some thought-provoking idea for you to chew on for that day. You don't always have to agree or disagree, and I try to get it done in 15 minutes or less. Last week, I posted 10 authors that every Christian should know, but it takes a while. You can't do that in 15 minutes. And so I just gave you 5 authors last week and said I'd give you the last 5 this week. Although I'm going to cut that down and just give you 4 this week. So here are 4, continuing on with last week, that I highly recommend. I'm going to start out this week's 4 with Richard J. Foster. Richard Foster, we actually have been introduced to him 2 weeks ago in his kind of landmark book, his greatest work, called Celebration of Discipline. Now, Richard Foster is a Quaker man with a contemplative background, and he's put together a group called Renovari. And that group kind of organizes Christian literature along perhaps a half dozen different tracks. Social justice, or maybe sacramental, or maybe fundamental with the study of Scripture, or maybe charismatic, or holiness, or piety, or contemplative, or something like that. And then he's put together a series of devotional guides where he takes some of the best authors in history and gives us excerpts from what they have written. Just powerful works. Now, the interesting thing is sometimes he will take someone that is kind of versed in contemplative or charismatic and put them over in the area of piety or sacramental, or vice versa. And so he'll show that sometimes, we pigeonhole authors sometimes along certain categories, and he will say it's not necessarily true. If you get a chance, look up Renovari and Richard Foster and see some of the stuff they're putting out. It's good stuff. When I started this series a couple of weeks ago, I suggested that we as Christians are too cooped up in our little boxes and that we need to kind of read outside of our box and see the width and the depth of Christianity, expand our horizons within our studies. And I think that's true, but I also think that sometimes we need to explore the depth of who we are. I've always felt like kind of a curious animal. I am quiet, kind of adventurous, not really outgoing, and I'm in an evangelical church. Spent my life in an evangelical church, which is pretty much outgoing and trying to share the gospel with other people. And so I've always felt I had a foot in 2 worlds. I never knew if I was more evangelical and outreach oriented, or if I was more internal and contemplative, almost monastic oriented. And as I got older, I decided to take a plunge and study the quiet side of me, which isn't going to be the same thing with you. But I went again outside my box to other areas, and I studied medieval, mystic authors, contemplatives, and I just love their stuff. St. John of the Cross that I mentioned last week was probably one of my all-time favorites. But also there was the Cloud of Unknowing. There was Julian of Norwich. There was Teresa of Avila. I could just go on and on and on. In the Orthodox tradition, there's the Philokalia, and then there's also the Way of the Pilgrim, which is kind of a classic among the Orthodox. Richard Foster, I've mentioned, his Renovari group. I've enjoyed it. I visited over my lifetime, I don't know how many monasteries, but I have found it helpful to read both my background in the denomination that I grew up, the history of it, the backgrounds of it, why they believe what they believe, but also those that write on the directions I feel pulled. I don't agree with all of them. They're not all my background, but they've helped me grow. Now, I'm not suggesting that you go out and read a bunch of contemplative authors. It may just put you to sleep. But I would suggest that while you're expanding your horizons, learning all these different things, that you also dig deep into your own traditions, into your own background, that you see the value of it. Because sometimes when we start looking around, we start thinking the grass is greener in the other pasture, and we overlook, we kind of are down in our own traditions. But I'm rooted and planted right in the very same tradition that I grew up in, and have enjoyed being in it. But I also study all over the place. So find the best authors in your tradition, in your background, and study them and see what makes them tick and what makes them great. Okay, let's go to number 3 for the day. I would recommend that you buy the very best commentary series that you can afford. That is not just a single little abbreviated set, and not just a real old public domain set that dates back 100, 150 years, but rather something that is relevant, something that has got modern scholarship in it, that's updated not too long ago, and that you study it. Now, I'm going to give a suggestion to you. I'm going to suggest the Expositor's Bible Commentary. It's been revamped. It works with the NIV version. It has good scholarship behind it. It does come from an evangelical, pretty conservative background, so you can be aware of that as you read it. But it has an excellent. It digs into the original languages. It digs into the cultures, the of the time. It gives interpretations. It doesn't just say you have to believe this one way. If there are varying interpretations, it will give various points of view and why the different theologians have thought different things. It's like a 13-volume set. Now, catch your breath. Hold your breath. The last I saw, which was just this last week, the version I saw was $650. But it's worth $650. Every penny of it. And there are ways you can get it cheaper. One is it comes in like a 13-volume set, and you can buy the volumes one at a time. That will save you money. You can go some source like Amazon or something like that. You can look it up and you can find where you buy it. You can buy it used. There's no reason not to buy a used, maybe a volume at a time. So rather than cost $30 or $40 a volume, you might be able to get it for $8 or $10 a volume. You can only read so much at a time anyway and study it carefully. Now, if you decide to do something like that, my suggestion is a lot of people skip the first volume. That is, the first volume are background and introductory articles to the Old Testament and the New Testament. And a lot of people think, well, I'm not going to wade through all of that. I'm going to get into the meat of the scripture. I would go so far as to say, if you only buy one volume, buy that one. The reason being is that is chock full of scholarship that most people only get in seminary. They'll give you backgrounds on scripture, and they help you grow and prepare more. There was a major American magazine at the turn of the century to the 21st century that proclaimed in one of their articles the greatest Christian theologian in the first 1,000 years of Christianity was St. Augustine. This is after Scripture, of course. They didn't count Paul, in there. And then the greatest Christian theologian of the last 1,000 years of Christianity is, according to that magazine article, it was St. Thomas Aquinas. Aquinas is kind of a hard read. I'm going to suggest, not that you try to read Aquinas and understand everything, but I'm going to suggest that you find some books about Thomas Aquinas and his views, his beliefs, his life, and that you study those as you study him. Make it like a biographical study and an idea study. Now, why do I suggest that? Because A lot of Christianity today, I mean, a huge amount of Christianity today, is influenced by Thomas Aquinas' writings. Furthermore, a lot of the ethics today that is that still holds a lot of water and is still viable, and ethical views that are still debated today come from Thomas Aquinas. A lot of scientific ideas come from Thomas Aquinas. Thomas Aquinas said that all truth is God's truth. He laid out an epistemological, the theories of knowledge that incorporates faith and science, philosophy, all put together. He's just a good, deep author. He was a person that was able to kind of bend it together. And in the world that we live in today, many of us have kind of divorced faith and science, or faith and logical reason, or our actions on Sunday and our actions during the week. We as people today seem to compartmentalize our faith, and Aquinas is challenges that in a big way. But like I said, he's difficult to read. He's difficult to read now. He was difficult to read when he wrote, but it's worth studying about him and learning about some of his views, because they're still influential today, and they still are make good arguments today. Well, there you have it. From 2 weeks ago, go back and look at the video. 10 books that every Christian should read, should understand, should know. Now, there are hundreds of books out there. These are just 10 that I had to narrow it down to 10, and these are the 10 I narrowed it down to. You might have others, but 10 books every Christian ought to know. Then the last 2 weeks, I said 10, but I gave you 9 authors that I highly recommend as being challenging. Not so easy as the 10 books, but challenging, and will help you grow. You read these 10 books, you go through these 10 authors, something in there is going to challenge you and make you think. And probably be threatening before you're done. But helps expand our little bubble that we're in. Now, next week I'm going to do something different. We're at the end of the year. I did this last year and people really liked it. I usually stick a short nature clip at the beginning of every video. I'm going to make a compilation of all those from this year and the best of those from last year, stick it to music, not have any talking, any devotion at all, just a background. It's the kind of thing, this is what I do at my house. I stick ambiances, I stick YouTube clips on my TV so I can look at nature and listen to soft music in the background. So here is my humble attempt to do the same thing. That'll be next Wednesday. And may God bless you and keep you and give you a very merry and very sacred Christmas.